So at night
and
you're like a Cape Crusader at night, you're like a
yeah,
pentagram strapped crusader, and that's kind of what you do, Oh, I'm serious. You're
yeah,
like you're
yeah.
like the only Satanist superhero I've ever seen. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But welcome to Sobriety Daily. I am Drew Littlejohns, and I'm here with Eric. How are you, sir?
I am all right, man. Just chilling, hanging out.
Hanging out. Now, how many years of sobriety have you racked up here?
6 years, and there's like some odd change of like months and stuff, but I'd say like 6 years.
So you and Brian are actually fairly close then.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think he has like a year less than I do, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, correct. Because he hit 5 and 40 this year. So I remember the one of the first meetings I went to was that I think it was the Wednesday newcomers meeting, and and you told this story that was here's to not feeling feelings, and I've never forgotten that. I mean, literally, like I sometimes I say that and I think I'm quoting the Big Book. It's that right. Ingrained into my recovery. So anyway, so go ahead and tell your story and about what's going on and where you're at now.
Sobriety Day is January 1st, 2015. I have a sponsor. He has a sponsor. I have a home group. I'm currently taking someone through the steps right now. We're going to meet up sometime soon, do a fifth step. My story as far as, what it was like drinking, it wasn't very exciting. There wasn't a lot of crazy stories or anything like that. It was mostly just hanging out with friends and, just getting drunk. I started at the summer of my 9th grade year, high school.
It's pretty early.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, for at least what the book says, it's usually around 13 is when most of us start off, the youngest. So I could definitely relate to that. Let's see. It wasn't, like I said, my first experience drinking and like feeling the effects that was produced by that first drink wasn't, it wasn't like an aha moment, a burning bush moment. It was just like I felt comfortable. Like if there was a weight on my shoulders just dropped from the lack of weight. I felt like I could be myself. I could be genuine. I could be funny. I could be.
So what part of you did you feel did you feel like drinking set you free in a way, or is it like it elevated you to a different place? Where like how would you describe that movement that drinking gave you?
I would probably say, it was like there was like a freeing aspect for sure. Being a kid, it's just like, people always tell you like, oh, you got to go to school, you got to do this with your life, you got to be successful, you got to get the white picket fence and everything like that, you got to do all these things, you got to go to college. I kind of didn't really have a huge desire to get into like academia or anything like that. Just kind of I wasn't sure what I wanted. I ended up using alcohol as kind of a way to feel that freedom, but all this restriction and everything was kind of confining me to, and I had already was listening to music that was fight against any kind of authority, just, I grew up listening to punk rock.
Yeah. Funny story, I was driving with my kids in the car the other day and we were listening to Linkin Park on the way to school. They go to a Christian school, and it was the non-swearing. It was like classic, like Meteora, Linkin Park. And my daughter says, she's 9, she goes, Dad, why are we listening to this? And I said, so, honey, when you feel like you need to rebel, this will be a good track for you to listen to. Just right. It's classic. And she's like, and we had this long talk about she's like, well, do I have to rebel? I'm like, well, you don't have to, So I'm like trying to pre-sabotage my kids so that rebellion is going to be basic. You know what I mean? She's going to be like, oh man, this is basic rebellion.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not sure if it's going to work yet, but it's worth a shot, I think.
Yeah.
So you were kind of going through that basic rebellion, very just standard, angst, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of teen angst, there's hormones and bodies changing and all this physical things that are happening in your body I also, from a very young age, went undiagnosed with like major depression. There's like that on top of everything else, like the hormone changes and like your body growing and changing in different places, getting hair, trying to feel macho and be all like tough and everything like that. And at the same time, like having this brain that's just like, like you're worthless kind of thing, and it's like, I don't know who to talk to. And like, society tells me like, men aren't supposed to like feel feelings. We're supposed to like stuff it and then just like, white knuckle it all the way through and, be tough that way. Showing emotion is weakness, and, we don't need that. Or what I perceive society impresses upon, young men. And
Sure. Did you have a strong kind of paternal figure in the house that you grew up in?
Yeah. My dad's still with my mom. They've been married since I was born. He wasn't always there just because he was an EMT. So there was a lot of times he was, he would have to be on call. So he wouldn't stay at the house. He would stay at the barracks there at the EMT place. I did kind of grow up in the generation of where, my generation was the last of the few that, when spanking was a thing,
Yeah.
So like,
yeah, I remember that.
So, there was a certain fear when someone's like, if you keep acting up, I'm going to tell your dad.
Do you feel like there's some positivity in the, I guess what you're kind of where you're going, or at least where I think you're going a little bit, is like, I know, like for me, like the program has really served as like a function for initiation for me. You know what I mean? And getting some of that tough aspects that I didn't get, right? Because I didn't get a lot of those kind of tough aspects. But I remember, when Bo picked up the phone and was like, look, are you going to drink right now? I'm like, no. And he's like, well, can you make it 6 hours? Yeah. Okay. Well, then be here at 8. Okay. I'll be there at 8, And it wasn't like this rush to your side. Oh, we're going to take care of you now,
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So okay. So you're drinking through high school. You've got a solid home life, but your internal structure is just, it's not, you've got to figure out a way to kind of harness that and get some control over what's going on the inside. Is that right?
Kind of. Yeah. And like, the alcohol helped a lot. So like a lot of the self-medicating was super important for me back then, just because, and Bo says this a lot, like I had this you suck voice that told me that I was worthless and that I sucked and blah, 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 and when I drank, that would kind of go away. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I don't have this like internal monologue where it's just like I'm ragging on myself and like not focusing on the moment, or as far as like, I guess being present for like, having fun and stuff with my friends.
So,
it was very,
so the you suck voice,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, it takes you out of the present. Is that like what you're saying, is that it takes you out of the present and it puts you back, like it makes you like hyper self-aware?
Yeah, totally. I've been in therapy for a while now, and kind of learned a little bit about that kind of like internal monologue or inner critic or whatever you want to call it. The you suck voice is spot on for me. So it was, right? Yeah. It's a very divisive part of my brain that likes to compare my insides to how I perceive other people around me. Like it could be, someone's like, oh yeah, like I just got like a second job, or, I just started my career and everything's happening so fast and it's great. And I'm like, shit, man, I work at Vans, I sell shoes. And then I still draw and
shoes.
Stuff,
Well, I run half of the young adults AA group and have for the last 5 years and changed hundreds of kids' lives. Yeah, I just work at Vans. Well, I'm a superhero at night. Yeah. It's a funny thing, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like you could trick yourself into believing that you just work at Vans. You could really easily trick yourself into believing that, and and it's just not true.
Yeah, totally. It comes with, for me, it came with time, of like constant working on myself, and not just like through the steps or anything and like being in program, but like seeking that initiative to get outside help, so the
Sure.
combination of both like helped me on that footpath to get to where like I can finally have that reverse perception where like instead of being like, oh, you're just a do the works advance, I'm like, yeah, that's true, but I work for a really awesome company. And at night I go and hang out with like, sober people.
No, at night you're like a Cape Crusader at night, you're like a
yeah.
pentagram strapped crusader, and that's kind of what you do, I'm serious. You're like you're like the only Satanist superhero I've ever seen. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, on some levels though, I really do feel that way, that like I've been thinking a lot about, wealth, or, like, I think that a long time ago, I think somebody said the words, what's your net worth? And they somehow attached it to money. Like, your net worth is like who your value as a human being, your net worth is somehow tied to money? No, right. No, your net worth. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about like, what is net worth? And what I came to is that net worth is something like your net impact over the world over the course of your life, and like, I don't know, like you were a very pivotal kind of character actor in my early sobriety. You know what I mean? And I wonder how many people have, your character, your kind of avatar that floats around in their head. You never know. You'd never know how much impact you've had so far, because you mostly deal with a lot of the young guys in the YPAA side of things, right?
Yeah. Sometimes, like I do go to like mixed meetings where it's, a mix of, people with time and, the young people and stuff like that. My home group is actually a men's stag where, everyone in there for the most part has like double-digit sobriety, and like the combination of time in that one single room is insane. And I'm not going to do math because I'm really bad at math, but I assure you it's pretty high. And for me, like, that's how I can help the younger guys, the younger people, is by listening to, those older men that were like, hey, like, this is how I did it and this is how I was shown to do it. And then I can take that and like, okay, like, how can I like translate this into like, for like the younger guy, or, the younger person who's struggling.
So what was your come to Jesus moment? What was that young guy struggling? What was can you relate to me the 48 hours leading up to and first day or so? Because you said January 1st. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that you decided to make New Year's Eve some sort of moment. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. So what it was, like, my entire drinking career up to this moment was, I like the people say in the rooms, it was fun with problems, and then it was just problems and stuff like that. It was fun for like the fun bracket was like that, like just minuscule. And then the fun with problems was, about the rest of it, and then the very last sliver was just like, like there's something wrong and I don't know really what to do about it. Because at that time I was still drinking. I was coming to meetings as support with a friend who's still in program today. And that's how, for me, like, at least the seed of recovery was planted, was by coming to those meetings like that. So when it came time for me to kind of, really, really look at what my drinking was, doing to me, like I said, the seed was already planted. I knew what to do and everything. It's just that willingness to want to do that wasn't really there. It wasn't there until, like I said, like how you were at, like, so New Year's Day, I remember hanging out with some friends and like, New Year's Eve, we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a little, little kickback, little get together, and just hang out, drink, and chill. And this entire time, I'm like, I don't know if I want to drink anymore, guys. Like, you know, it's not fun anymore, you know. And they're just like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I think I'm gonna stop drinking and smoking, you know. And I'm like, I'm gonna go straight edge. And so, you
Now,
know,
is
the whole
that's
like,
respectable in the punk scene? You could either be hardcore alcoholic or you can be straight edge, and they're both equally respected. Is this correct?
sometimes, yeah. So as
Sometimes.
far
Okay.
as like in the hardcore community and stuff like that, straight edge people are normally people who like obviously don't drink, don't smoke, don't do drugs and stuff like that, don't do caffeine. Um, you know, they're don't put anything in their body that's not natural. And so sometimes they'll be so convicted with that belief that they'll go to shows with the intent on beating someone up because they've drank a beer in front of them, you know, and they're like, that's not cool, that's wrong, you know. And so
Wow. Okay.
it's a little it's a very fine line.
Okay. Interesting. So you're like, okay, guys, I'm thinking about taking this path,
Yeah.
and they're like, okay, or they're like, yeah, right. What's their reaction at that point?
You know, a lot of them were like, you know, pretty supportive. They're just like, yeah, dude, you can do it. Like, you know, we've seen you kind of drinking it, and it's like kind of, it doesn't look fun for you. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not, you know. And you know, and one of my buddies, who I'm still friends with, and his whole thing was like, because my concern was like, can I actually do it? You know, can I be straight edge? His whole thing was like, you know, he's like, look at it this way, man. Like, if you drink tonight, just don't drink tomorrow, and just live your life like that. I'm like, that sounds like a good
That's so
idea.
good.
You know, I just needed that one little push to be like, it's okay to drink tonight, you know. So I did, you know, and again, you know, like, I mean, there was a little bit more fun to be had because, you know, I had gotten that bit of weight off my chest as far as like, yeah, like I can just quit tomorrow. Like, we'll see what happens tomorrow. You know, for the moment, just like, let's just get drunk, you know, let's party. And, you know, like I said, that little bit of fun, that wavered. And that, you know, became, you know, again, you know, me sitting outside, you know, by myself while everyone was inside, just like chain smoking cigarettes and just like feeling down. You know, and then I get a phone call from a friend, that same friend who I would show up to meetings with, as support and everything like that. And they're just like, hey, like there's a thing going on in Slow with a bunch of people from AA. Like, do you want to go? And I'm like, I've been drinking. I'm a little drunk, but I don't feel drunk. And they're like, it's AA. No one cares. No one gives a shit. Just come if you want. And I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds cool. So they came and got me, from AG, and then we went out to Slow. And that's when, I kind of saw for the first one of the few times I've seen, in that weird area of like drinking, but having gone to meetings, like where I saw people genuinely enjoying themselves. And, you know, I don't know, just there was something about it that seemed appealing at that time, just because, like I was saying, like I finally had the will to just like, this sucks. Like, I can't keep doing this. And that night I saw something, and, you know, like I said, I was going to go through with the whole straight edge, New Year's resolution thing. So the next day, like, I didn't drink. Like, I threw away the pack of cigarettes I have. Like, I chain smoked them all. You know, woke up the next day sounding like the Wolfman. He's dead, and like, it kind of it was super bad. And you know, like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start new life, like straight edge. No drinking, no drugs. Like, drugs things was you know, pretty easy. I didn't really do drugs that much because I had other friends that did drugs habitually that made it look not very fun and cool. So I was like,
right.
I don't want to look like a jackass, so I'm just gonna stick
You know,
with beer and cigarettes.
That was how I kind of had mine. You know, I never really did the drugs thing either. And then I actually never did the hardcore, like sleeping around thing. Because my brother used to get in all this trouble. I'd have girls like walk up to me and like slap me in the face for something he had done to them 3 years earlier, you know, and like I'm like growing up as like this little kid, and this girl's like, your brother's a dick, you know, and like oh god, like, you know, like I mean, like I love my brother, but it was just, you know, he was like what, like 19, you know, he was like a player. It was like fine, he was 19, but like, so from a very young age, I was like, okay, I don't think I want to do that. And then the drugs thing was pretty obvious that I was like, probably being like a ADHD, it probably didn't sound like, you know, it's probably not a really good fit. So like, I totally hear that, because when I started drinking at 23, boy, is the only thing that could actually like get my brain, because I was absolutely self-medicating with having that, you know, because like I don't have a huge you suck voice. What I have is a you should do this voice, and it tells me to do a million things all at the same time, all the time. I never get anything done. And like today, I almost broke down crying today, because I had so much stuff to do, and I could not focus. I couldn't bring it into focus to like get what I needed to get done today, and it was really hard, you know. Anyway, so I just never really did the drinking or not the, of course, the drinking. Never did the drug stuff. Okay, so you're 23. You're sounding like a 95-year-old grandma with emphysema, and you're coming off of your first AA meeting, right? Actually seeing people actually having a good time.
Well, it was more of like I'd been to meetings prior to that evening. This was like kind of like the first one where it was a mixed group of, you know, varying ages. So, you know, like young to old, you know, everyone in between that. People would bring their kids, you know, and like the kids were like, my thing was like, holy shit, like you're gonna let your kids be around this person who said like, yeah, like I used to, you know, like drive drunk, you know, like for like fun. It's like you're allowing them to be around them. So like that was a part of it. Like there was like the whole redemption part of it, and that was really cool to see.
Yeah.
You know, and I felt like, you know, for me that was a very pivotal moment, because like I said, that was the time where I was like, okay, like I'll get sober, but not like that sober, you know, like.
So you mean like that was like, so for you, witnessing somebody being, we'll call it forgiven or something, like that was a huge thing, because you're like, look at that, this guy, like, yeah, like he admitted that he was that way. And so like, was there a part of you that said like, oh, like I really want to have my sins forgiven as well, or like you wanted to be able to change and you felt like AA was a safe place that you were allowed to change?
Yeah, I mean, so as far as it goes, like my whole plan was to get sober. Well, sober, yes, but like, you know, not have the program. You know, I was gonna do it by myself, like pull myself up by my own bootstraps, and you know, just like I can do it. Exactly.
Sobriety.
Exactly.
Yeah, all alone and depressed and sad and
very angry. Yeah. Exactly.
That's terrible. Terrible.
No, yeah. I mean, looking back on it, like it's not ideal. It wasn't ideal, you know? And like I did that for a month. Like I white knuckled for a month, and that was brutal, dude. Like I don't ever want to do that again, you know? And I feel like, you know, sometimes I feel like a pussy, because like there'll be people who'll be like, yeah, I white knuckled for 5 years, and it's like, bro, okay, damn.
What, dude?
Like,
when I hear that, I'm like, what? Yeah. Okay. All right. Not to interrupt you too much, but so a buddy of mine goes and visits her friend, right? And her friend had gotten her husband to start drinking again. And he had been sober for 5 years. Now he had white knuckled it with marijuana therapy. He had stayed sober, right? And I guess she went back to go and visit, and she went and saw the guy. And I said, well, what was it like? She's like, well, he was awesome to be around. Because, right? Like, look, like if you're white knuckled sobriety is not like, I mean, white knuckled sobriety, when people say like, oh, somebody got sober, they became dull. It's like, well, yeah, the white knuckled sobriety is that's just awful, man. That's a terrible place. So you did 1 month like this and you were like, no, this is not. Did you think I need some friends? Did you think what did you think that like what were you like? What part of white knuckling it were you the most like kind of cringeworthy for? Like you're like, oh, I just hate this part.
All of it, to be real, all of it. Just because at that time, that friend who I was going to meetings with as support, right? They had moved from the area. They moved from here to Austin, Texas. So, going from California to Texas, it's quite a bit of ways. And, and I hung out with this person, pretty often, so it was like, we were like basically attached at the hip, and like so much so people thought we were dating. I'm like, nah, this is just a homie, dude. Like, chill.
Yeah, when I used to walk down the beach with my my son like strapped to my chest on my I got a little baby boy, or he was like 6 now, I guess. But when I would walk down the beach with him and my business partner, everybody always thought that we were a couple. Eventually we got to the point where we were like, we're totally cool with it. We're like, yeah, what's up? Like, we're good,
You wish you had this, yeah.
Look, man, this happens so many times that at some point you just own it. You're like, you know what? Yes, we are in a committed relationship. We've been business partners for 8 years. Look, the amount of bank accounts that we've had so many financial discussions, like we get it. But yeah, we're in a relationship. It's cool.
Yeah, it's chill, But like it was that kind of friendship, we were very close with each other, Not only did we drink with each other, they got sober and they were like the catalyst for me getting sober as well. Like I said, so like I owe me finding out what AA really is about, because my only, prior to any of like friends going to like, I think I need to go to AA and rehab and stuff like that, like prior to that, the only knowledge I had of AA was Fight Club. And I was like,
oh right, yeah, I guess Fight Club probably did more for support groups than yeah, right.
Like, so I was like, that sounds terrible. Like, I hope I can manage my drinking, And it was just like, oh, like I don't. Now, like I said, like that comparison, like having that be my only representation of what I thought AA was and to what AA is now, or what it is actually is a little of that, but so much more at the same time, it's crazy.
So do you get upset when people refer to AA and they say it's kind of like a cult or it's kind of like a church?
No, not at all. Like I laugh super hard, especially when they say it's a cult, because if we're a cult, we're the shittest cult out there.
The worst.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just like, we have to have one charismatic leader. We have tons of them. And we're supposed to follow the direction. No one listens to anyone.
No one knows who's in charge ever. Like you show up to a meeting and you're like, who's leading the meeting? And it's like, I don't know. Hey, Drew, you got 6 weeks of sobriety. Do you want a secretary of this meeting? Okay.
Exactly.
What do I do? Well, you read out of this folder here. You pass around a basket. Some people put money in, and then you read out of a book. You can lead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. No.
I laugh about the cult thing too. I had somebody make a cult comment to me on social media a couple of days ago, and I just went, how on earth you wind up at AA as a cult? I mean, you need to go to a real cult, all right? Just like go to a real one, figure it out. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I remember in a meeting I called AA. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like church, but infinitely better. And Kurt comes up to me afterward and goes, hey Drew, like I agree with you, but don't ever call AA church. People get really bothered by that sometimes.
Some people do, yeah. Like it doesn't bother me that, someone, calls it church, or if they call it a cult. It means something to other people. For me, it means a break, an hour break in my life where I get to address things that are bugging me, and that will ultimately, if not addressed, will make me drink, or at least think about isolation. And I want to put a bullet in my head then after that. I'm like, that's, for me, that's how I view it. It's just an hour break of dealing with things that happen in life naturally, that as an alcoholic, I don't have the what's it called, the manual book for life, or whatever, the rule book for life. I don't know how to
whatever it is that normies are born with. I missed that.
Yeah, exactly. They were handing those out, and they're like, screw that guy.
You're like, I don't know, maybe they handed that out in like 9th grade home ec for like the last period, because I skipped it because I was always drinking.
Right, yeah, no.
Yeah, I missed that too. I decided to become a radical codependent instead of learn how to be, comfortable with myself.
Yeah, and that's what I've noticed too, is that a lot of alcoholics tend to exhibit that kind of behavior, especially when it's like newly sober people. They'll attach themselves like a friggin' parasite. I'm doing my best not to drop F-bombs. Exactly. Yeah. And so they're just like, they latch onto people, and it's cool, it's whatever. But sometimes it gets to a point where it's just like, it becomes this weird obsession, and it's just like, holy crap, you're becoming codependent, and this is sketchy. I am fortunately not one of those people. I'm like, you don't want to hang out, it's fine with me, I get to chill by myself. You kidding me? Hell yeah.
I had a sponsee one time who referred to those kind of characters as emotional vampires.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, like something like so I made a video. I think it's coming out like tomorrow or the next day, but it's this idea that sometimes people like, they get in the program, and like what they really want is to like understand psychologically, like how they got there, what's wrong, like what makes them tick. And there's so much like jargon, like just like big words, whatever. And I'm like, you can just work the steps. You actually don't have to understand how they work. It literally doesn't matter. If I teach you the pattern to solve a Rubik's Cube, it just gets solved. You don't actually have to know the math, right? Yeah. And I've really come to believe that the steps are that way. Like you could find out how they work psychologically. I mean, there's lots of arguments for, how the steps work and why they work, but it's totally unnecessary to understand. And I find that a lot of times the new people who are brand new in their sobriety, man, they want to understand everything. And really it's about like, no, it's about, dude, you're sober. Go and experience what life feels like as a sober person. It's great. It's great out there. You'll actually remember what you did yesterday.
That'll feel like a superpower.
Yeah. And you just might not regret what you did yesterday. And you actually might be able to walk down the street and look people in the eye without being afraid because you didn't drink yesterday. Who knows? Who's to say? You could have a great life.
Right?
That's how I look at it. It's like, I told the story a while ago about how I ducked into fanny wrappers one time because I saw somebody that I had been like drinking near, and I was like walking, and I was like, boom, it's like bam, like right into fanny wrappers. You're like sitting there, and you're like, yeah, here I am. This is great.
It's like,
well, yes, I will buy a $160 piece of lingerie. Okay, this is happening. All right, well, that last night drinking just got way more expensive.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. Like, when I came in, I was just beaten down enough by both disease and my mind where even though I had questions and stuff, and like I really wanted to kind of like probe at certain people and pick the brain, you know, I at the same time I was just like desperate enough to find some kind of relief, you know, and I didn't question it. I just said, screw it, do it, see what happens.
Did you start steps and sponsor stuff? Like, did you get in and just kind of get after it?
Yeah, exactly. So like after the events of, you know, the whole gonna be straight edge and gonna go do it myself and white knuckled it, you know, I hit that wall, you know, where I was gonna it's like the book says, we came to a spot where we have to make a decision whether we're gonna take the leap and, you know, jump, or we're just gonna stagnate, essentially. You know, and for me, that wall, that cliff or whatever it is, like what I hit was either, you know, I was gonna kill myself or I was gonna get drunk then kill myself. You know, like there was just, those were the two options, and exactly which one's better. Do I get some kind of temporary numbness to kind of get the balls to, you know, like shove a knife into my neck?
If you can get the balls to kill yourself, you can get the balls to get sober. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. You know, so like that for me, that was the jumping off point. You know, it was, just do this one way or the other. I'm not going to be alive. For some reason, I decided to make a phone call before I did that. You know, and I'm glad I did. You know, I ended up calling that friend who was still en route to Texas. You know, I called them and I was just like, hey, like this is what's going on. And they essentially were like, well, have you talked to anyone in AA about it? Like, have you gotten a sponsor yet and started at least step 1 or 2? And I was just like, no. And they're like, this is bullshit, dude. Like, I'm not going to co-sign like any of this shit unless you start, you know, getting sober and doing the work. You know, and sure enough, that was enough to kind of like call the person who was going to be my first sponsor, you know, and kind of talk to him for a little bit. And like, I could tell it was super weird because like I called him with the intent to be like, hey man, I think I have a problem and I need someone to take me through the steps. Will you be my sponsor, kind of thing. It just started off as a regular ass conversation, just like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And just like, yeah, like kind of dealing with this and blah, blah, blah. And like, in the back of my mind was just like, say it, dude, just ask him to be your sponsor, you know, just like, you know, like, just get it over with. Don't be a bitch. And it was just like, I could tell, like, if I didn't say anything, I wouldn't have said, you know, I wouldn't be here right now. You know, I wouldn't have taken that first initiative. And so, you know, it was awkward. People say it's like asking another dude to prom, and it's very true. The first time I'll say that. The first time it's like asking someone to prom. Second time it's like, you know, finding a second wife. It's like,
yeah, are we gonna do this or not?
Cool.
Let's do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
See you on Tuesday. Come to my porch, you know, and
we'll
yeah, I mean, like I thought that because the guy picked up the phone, I thought that because Bo picked up the phone that he was my sponsor. So like a week later, I was like, so when are we going to start the steps? He's like, whoa, you can't just do that. I was like, what do you mean? Because I guess he hadn't like taken on a new sponsee in like a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And he's like, no, you can't just like, you got to ask, man. And I was like, well, you're going to be my sponsor? He's like, well, yeah, of course. But I mean, seriously.
Yeah, no, totally. I think when that happened, I think the newest sponsee he had, I think, was me, honestly.
Oh, really?
So I think so, yeah. Because at the time it was like still like Rob, Eli, and Tim, Grant, you know, like all those guys, and it was just like, and then there was me.
And then there's you.
Yeah, and you know, Bo was like, "These are your sponsee brothers," and I was like, "Hi."
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
They're like, "Welcome
so
to the
funny,
family," kind of thing. Yeah. So I think at the time, like, I may have been like the newest sponsee he had.
Yeah, and you had like 3 or 4 years at that point. When
so,
Eli,
yeah.
God, Eli's got tons of years. And, I mean, just good stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
There is something about about both sponsoring. Like I see pictures of a guy that I sponsored. He was the first guy I sponsored, and he had 6 months at the time. And no, he had 3 days when I got a hold of him. And yeah, like now he's got like a you're not, Austin, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I was like, man, you know what? Like I love knowing that, like, got to take him through the steps and do the deal, and you know what I mean? I'm like, what a great experience. And that's the part of the magic of the program, right? That, like, My Little Pony was right. Friendship is magic.
Yeah, man.
I mean, seriously,
No, totally. I mean, like there's a whole scientific theory that was tested about it. They used the rats. It was called a rat park. And apparently, the reason why I found this out was because I had pitched a meeting once, and another buddy of mine, Kelly, who's in program, approached me afterwards. He's like, "Hey, what you were talking about was this thing called rat park." So what scientists did, they got two rats essentially. One had just a regular cage with water, the water thing where they would get their water, obviously. One with regular water, one with water that was laced with cocaine. And so, what they did is that they built this huge thing, this huge enclosure, and got a bunch of rats, put them in the thing, and noticed that none of them went to the water that was laced with cocaine. But when they isolated like one rat from the rest of the herd, so to speak, and given the choice between the clean water or the water laced with cocaine, it would, obviously went to the one with cocaine, got that effect, and kept going back to it again and again and again and again. And so it kind of showed that, like, there's this weird connection with having a community or a networking of people that is like ultimately like one of the factors to kind of combat addiction and alcoholism and stuff like that. And so it's super interesting. I only know it, but like I said, by the one name I was told, which was Rat Park. And at first I'm like, is this like Jurassic Park but with rats? Like, like
no, but it's true though. It is actually true that that addictions, and because think about it, in that space where everybody's playing together and everybody's doing stuff together, like, you want to be present. Like when you're in a room and everybody is sober, you want to be sober because you want to be present. I have my kind of one of my things that I just kind of, it's like a drum that I bang all the time. But drinking to me is like, for every one drink you have, you're 10% less present. And this is why when people go to the bars, everybody's had 8 drinks by 1:30 in the morning. People are only 20% present. That means that everybody's 80% the same. 80% the same, which is true, right? And it's like, oh my God, we have so much in common. Like, oh my God, like, I just love you. You're just, oh God, we're all the same now. And it's like, and that's what people like. Well, but like, something like a Rat Park, whatever, like who you are, there's actual value to you. And so everybody's not looking to try to become somebody else, or they're not trying to like disappear or be afraid, and the program really gives people the confidence to like just be themselves, not even have to worry about it,
Yeah, exactly. So like, there's like, it like I said, that whole study was fascinating. And like, after finding out about, like, being told about it, I went back to my place, the next day, and or that night, but the next day I woke up and I looked it up, and I'm like, there's gotta be bullshit. Like, he's pulling my leg a little bit, at least somewhat fabricating something. But no, and it was true, and it's crazy, and like, it's super fascinating. And it's, I mean, for me personally, that's just one factor of as far as, at least for my program, it's just one factor of it. There is, in my opinion, a lot more than just fellowship. I've seen people do just fellowship and get years, and that's fine. If it works for them, it works for them. I know for me personally, if I were to just strictly stay on fellowship, I would start picking fights with so many people just because, you know, I didn't have that chance to work on what pisses me off when I can see myself in other people. Certain things about myself I see in other people that piss me off, you know? Right. So someone who's kind of being like a, you know, a dickhead is just like, oh, blah, 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 and it's like, I'm going to hit you in the face now. Like, you know, why? Because I do the same thing and I hate that. You know, and
yeah,
so
and I can't punch myself in the face. I mean, geez, I'm not a jerk to me anyway.
I used to before getting into fights, just to like kind of deaden the okay, this is gonna hurt a lot, and it kind of made them a little afraid to just be like, oh, he's hitting himself. Okay,
yeah,
this person clearly does not care about their well-being. I don't know. If
clearly not. You know, they've already they've numbed themselves. So you said that so fellowship, it's high up there on your list, but it sounded to me like you were alluding to something, to some other part of your program that is of equal or stronger footing. And then for the last questions, I want you to address that. Like, what is it that is in addition to fellowship? And then next would be the if you were to talk to your younger self who's just getting started with sobriety, what would you say? So those are the last two little thoughts I want to get from you.
Yeah, totally. Well, you know, like for me personally, it's everything. You know, it's service work, it's step work, it's sponsorship, it's, you know, leading meetings, being at meetings, secretarieship, service commitments, you know, I already said step work, you know, the fellowship, all those things. Just because, like, it was put to me this way when I had, like, I think before I even had a year or like a year and a half something, I was like, oh, like I was all about service and like starting to get more into like step work and everything like that, you know, and like starting to kind of become a little bit of a big book thumper kind of, you know, and someone was just like, who had, I think at the time he had like 8 years or something like that, and he was just like, you know, like what works is everything. I don't know what combination of service work and sponsorship or step work and, you know, fellowshipping, I don't know what percentage of all of those equals a decent,
is this the Kurt speech?
Life. No, it wasn't Kurt. It was Clark. It was Clark. You know, and
maybe
so, you know,
Kurt stole it from Clark then.
Maybe. I don't know. But you know, it was very much like I do everything because I don't know what combination of 2, 3, 5, you know, maybe just one works for me, you know. So I do everything. In my experience, I try to do now I try to do everything to the best of my ability. You know, I can't always be there for everyone. When I was new in sobriety, it was like, we're gonna save all the drunks. Now it's like, I'll do what I can to the best of my ability, you know,
to the best of my ability. I mean, that's why I started doing this. I mean, I started doing Sobriety Daily when I had 6 months of sobriety. Like, what did I know? I got 2 years now. Still, like, what do I know? But like at some point, it's like, look, maybe you out there think I'm doing this for you. You'd be wrong.
Exactly, yeah. And that's
you'd be wrong. Too, I do it for me because it's what keeps me sober. So
yeah,
thanks for keeping me company.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's a weird, selfish yet altruistic solution. It's super weird. It's a friggin' paradox is what it is.
I haven't been able to figure it out either. I do so much of this. I probably spend 2 to 3 hours a day working on this stuff, you know, and it's like, I don't know. I enjoy it. You know, I enjoy the way it keeps me sober. And I like feeling like I'm building something in the world of sobriety. You know what I mean? Because I'm away from my home. I'm away from my home groups in Colorado, and the program just hasn't opened up here yet. So there's no in-person meetings really yet. So it's been, yeah, I know. So I'm like, man, crazy, Yeah, the bars have opened up, but you can't go to AA. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? Okay, so last comment. What would you tell to young, newly sober Eric? What's the advice you'd give him?
Oof. It's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay.
Sucks right now. You're gonna be okay. Sucks right now, but just trust in something.
I like that. Thank you, Eric, for coming on the show. It's gonna be okay, boy. Now that is some great advice. Stick around after we sign off here. All right.
Yeah, totally.
All right. We'll see you.